What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates in the Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. And before I introduce my longtime friend, we've been friends a long time, Jason Moss, I'm going to first thank everybody for tuning in. We did have that long hiatus during the whole COVID nonsense that's been going on. I was running for office. I did a whole bunch of things on live video, and I just thought I was oversaturating myself with live videos. So I pulled away from podcasting for a little bit. But we're back now. Last week's episode with Gary Byrne was my first one back. So I'm sort of back into the groove, into the swing of things. If anybody wants to learn more about me personally, you can go to my website, mattcubbler.com. You can also find all copies of the previous episodes, the video and the audio on my webpage. But you can also subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever else you listen to podcasts, you can find Two Dates in the Dash podcast. So without further ado, my man, Jason Moss. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, Mr. Cubbler? How are you, sir?
Living a dream every day, buddy. Every day. I'm not as good as you, though. Somehow we're the same age, but you're in a completely different physical spot than I am.
It's the beard, man. It's the beard.
That's what it is?
All
right.
Yeah, it's the beard. Got to rock the beard. Can you do that? Your department will they let you do that?
Yeah, we can. Problem is, so I'm a German. Well, I refuse to do the DNA testing kit because I'm not sure exactly how. I'm not sure what all the other ramifications that come from that would be, but supposedly I'm all German and a little bit of Irish and English.
Okay.
I look like a warrior Nordic Viking.
Dude, I would rock the hell out. I would rock the hell out of that, dude.
It's orange though, and my wife hates it. Well,
that's a different story.
The wife hates it, so I have to make sure I keep her happy.
Enough said.
So how are you?
I'm doing excellent. I cannot complain, man.
How's the world of personal training and chef? You're a goddamn personal chef. You have a book coming out, cookbook.
So you know what? It's very interesting. I've been very blessed and very fortunate through all of this. I had about 2 weeks where I felt sorry for myself. So this all blew up in March. So like right before, literally right as they were shutting everything down, I had a gig in Connecticut. I was catering a movie, and I was driving out to Connecticut, and from Philadelphia, or from Reading to the bridge in Philadelphia going into Jersey, I lost about $4,000 worth of business, like one email after the other. Like I had March booked. I was good. I was ahead of the game. March was going to put me where I needed to be moving forward. One email after the other, literally in like 2 hours, I lost my entire business. So I went to Connecticut, did the gig. Fortunately, that was, a little chunk of change that held me over for a few weeks. So I come home. I still had to finish up the book. So I just immersed myself, for a few weeks in that. And then I took about 2 weeks to feel sorry for myself. Poor, pitiful me. I have no business. What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I got to figure it out. And I started delivering tacos to people. And then from there, I just got a whole nother delivery business. And this is it evolved into a brand. And now I'm selling spices, and they got the cookbook, and I'm doing T-shirts. And so, I've been very fortunate that, I allowed myself to open up to the evolutionary change that was happening. And yeah, I mean, it was either sink or swim.
I know the feeling. As you know, I had lost Max out. My gym business that I'd spent 11 years building. It's a lot harder when you have and rent. And all those things coming.
Yeah, you can't be as fluid.
And with the way our business was set up, and it didn't have a whole lot of left or right pivoting capability because of our technology and how we interact with it. And there was never going to be a way that we could recover financially, number one, just because of the price point we were at. We're a luxury personal training business. We're not in the, the $10, Snap Fitness or whatever, plan.
Right.
So for us, our clientele were people that, were either splurging and doing that, taking our training, or this was people that use it as a luxury type
right
of
right
as a supplement to their other fitness. And we did a survey and it was catastrophic. The number of people that were out of work, that were clients that we're going to have to trim some fat and make sure that they put food on the table before they went to max out, which I completely understand. And
Right.
from that, we just decided that it was probably best to cut the losses. And, if the governor would allowed us to have a business without the ungodly chokehold restrictions, we probably would have kept it open. But knowing what I knew about what was forthcoming and how long I was predicting that this was going to last, we made the right choice, because there's no way.
Right.
Knowing now what we know, if we knew in May what we know now, which I was predicting anyways, had we not listened to my prediction, we would have been sunk. I mean,
yeah. And I think
more in debt.
Right. And, and I think it's hard to speak objectively now, because we're still in the midst of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you are one of those few businesses that really couldn't, like you said, you didn't have that left or right pivot room. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, your business is one of those businesses that was collateral damage, and there's no two ways about that. But I think, with the exception of someone like you, I really think that this was a time and is a time for people to really sit with themselves, find out what's important, what's really important, and not bitch about the small little, oh, I can't sit and have brunch, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. But what's really important, you know what I mean? Refocus, retool, retune, and re-engineer our lifestyle, and find out that a lot of that stuff we were running around and being crazy about and this and that really was bullshit, and it was getting in the way of what's important. You know what I mean? And I hope that, if nothing else, we can take, as a society, we can take that away from this.
I hope so. Yeah, well, I want to talk about all this. So we can just keep on talking without me asking the one important question that everybody wants to know. And I ask the same question to every guest, because I think it's important. Because when you ask this question from even though we know each other, if somebody were to ask me who you are, I would give one explanation.
Right.
You hear it from the person who they believe they are, and what their what their first thoughts are about who they are, really tells a lot about their mindset and their soul and who they are. So I'm going to ask you the one question I ask everybody: who is Jason Moss?
Jason Moss is a person who is learning to learn. That is the one thing that I've really tried to do over the last few years, is just to learn, and not try to. And a lot of times when people learn, they're trying to learn what they already know. I'm trying to learn what I don't know. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to use that information backwards to forward. So I'm trying to take what I know now, figure out why I was who I was when I was that person, and work forward to progress to a better life form. I'm a father, I'm a chef, I'm an artist, I'm a personal trainer. I'm a lot of things, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm someone who's just trying to learn.
I love that. And we're going to go on a left turn here real quick, but people like to say that I'm sort of a conspiracy theorist at heart, which I am.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a tin.
But I look at it as where I'm not really, I don't espouse any one theory. What I love is I love a good mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I love looking at something and going, this is a complex, fucked up situation.
Yeah.
What are the different outcomes and possibilities that could potentially come from this? And I go down every rabbit hole. And it doesn't mean I believe every one of those. It means I'm willing to go down and explore it and learn, and then sit back and go, okay, I'm watching this in real time, and I now have all these different theories in my head, and which one is the one that's playing out.
Right.
It's like, I like looking in. I'm cheating. I like to look in the playbook. I want to see all the different ones that are happening.
No, I agree.
And for me, I guess even since when I was a kid, we're at Pottstown High School, and I did do
Right.
a report on, a book report on something. I did it on, JFK. I did one on the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. I did them
Right.
all. And it's funny when you're talking about figuring out what you learned and how you got to be where you are, and sort of reverse engineering your life after you've
Yeah.
already lived some of it. When I go back and look at my life, and I was talking to my wife about this, there's a lot of things about me that are 100% the same today
Mhm.
as I were back then. Like it's weird. I don't have people at my house very often,
No, same.
and I'm not a host. I get very
Right.
stressed out when people are in my house.
Yeah, same. I totally understand.
And I was that way when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, it was because I was poor as shit. And I
Right.
don't like people seeing me poor. Like, I didn't need to
Right.
expose that part of my life. And I think I've just always maintained it, because I've never in my lifetime, we have, very close friends that come over and some family, but I'm not hosting Christmas parties or Halloween parties or shit like that.
No.
That's just not who I am. But I've always been a seeker of solving mysteries. Like, I want to, and there's always 17 different possible ways that happened. And I want
Always.
to know what those
Always.
17 are.
Well, what did Einstein say? To paraphrase, he goes, "You take out everything that's improbable, and what's left is what's possible."
Yep.
So, or something to that effect. But yeah.
So let's do a deep dive into the past first, since you brought up how you got to where you are today. So for those of you who don't know, Jason and I are both from Pottstown. We've actually shared a stage speaking together when we did the graduation for whatever, I forget what
Star Academy or something
Star
like
Academy,
that.
yeah. And I got a little bit of a glimpse into your story from that. And even though we've known each other a long time, there's pieces of our lives that we just don't know about each other. So let's tell everybody about, you've overcome some obstacles along the way growing up, made some choices.
Correct.
Choices have consequences. And I think it's important for people to hear about those, because then it really gives context to who you are today, the foundation that you stand upon today.
Correct. I always tell people, and I'll explain why I tell people this in a minute. I always tell people that your past is nothing more than your permission slip for the future. You take someone like myself, if you went to your job tonight and you pulled up Jason Moss on your little laptop there, not knowing who I was, and you saw what you saw, you'd have and didn't know me, and then met me, you would have a totally different opinion of who you think I am based on what it says on that computer screen.
Yep.
When I was 22 years old, and let me back this up. Nothing that I did in my past, I blame on anyone else. I made those choices. I put myself in those situations. I hung with those individuals. I did those actions. It's not because of my dad wasn't there. My mom didn't love me. I didn't get hugs. My dog died when I was 4. Not, you know what I mean? Like, there's always an excuse, but at the end of the day, you are 100% accountable for your actions. I'm going to start saying that. So when I was 21, 22, I was in a car that was involved in a drive-by shooting. To this day, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know who had the gun. I don't know if I had it, whatever, because I was drunk, high, whatever. I was in the car. That happened. That led to me getting 3 felony charges that of course, still on my record to this day. I've also struggled with and have been sober for 15 years. So I'm a recovering alcoholic. So all of these things in my past have brought me to where I am now. And like I said, your past is your permission slip for the future. You know better than I do. When you take a certain path, society automatically looks at you a certain way, and it's up to you to either validate their opinion or to make them rethink make them rethink about that situation. Because there are some truths in our society, whether right or wrong, it's the way it is. Now, like I said, I made those mistakes. Those were mine to make. Whatever. I did my time, I blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, in this country, once you are a convicted felon, you're given a life sentence. Regardless what you did, you have a life sentence. I've even as close as recent as 2 years ago, I was turned down for apartments. I've been turned down for jobs. I've been turned down for 2 different TV shows because of something I did 20 years ago. Listen, that's my past. That's what I have to bear, but it's still what it is. So I have, over the years, number one, I'm very vocal about my past. I'm very vocal about being a recovering alcoholic. I'm very vocal about the past. I'm a convicted felon, blah, blah. I'm very vocal. Not that I'm proud or wearing it as a badge of honor. It is what it is. And in this day of technology, it doesn't take much to find out what a person has done. So I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to put it on the table so it's out, and then we can move forward. I also am very open about my past because of people like me or people in similar situations as me get caught up in this societal mind trap that once you fucked up, you've always fucked up, which is not the case.
I think that's a great point, because the foundational component to your life, and you're exactly right. If I were to pull you up and then we never met, and I pull you over on a car stop and I run your license, and all of a sudden there's all this information pops up about Jason Moss, my opinion of you is that
it's totally different.
Right, absolutely. And I think the crux of what you said, and I do agree that the life sentence part of being a felon and having a life sentence is real. A friend of mine who I mentor is a convicted drug dealer, felon in Florida, and he helped to allow to pass in Florida that felons can vote. That
nice.
Still on probation parole, and he passed. He was very integral in part of that. Now he's working for a company, Fair Housing Alliance, helping convicted felons get fair housing and pass.
Right.
So I want to probably connect you two together. I think you guys would like each other. Anyways, the crux of the consequences of your actions from when you were 22 are that they stick with you forever.
Forever.
The issue that most people don't ever address is, what do I do then? Knowing if, and it's not a secret that felony is going to be on your record forever. It's not a secret that you're going to have this stigma attached to you as a convicted felon forever. But how you address that is what you're doing.
Exactly. And it's all about accountability. And I was just talking to somebody about that today. You are 100% accountable for everything in your life. And people say, "Oh, what if I was assaulted?" No, you're not accountable if somebody rapes you or you're molested for a kid. I'm not saying that. I'm saying how you handle it after the fact, you're 100% accountable for. You know what I mean? How you heal, you're accountable for. How you process that, how you get help, how you move past that. And in my case, I was accountable for what I did, but I'm also accountable for how I am perceived past that. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this. Do you think that, because I truly do believe that one of the greatest things about America is the ability to start your own business and the ability to create something for yourself. So you aren't, and one of the greatest things about being an entrepreneur is that it forces accountability, because it's literally the biggest risk you can take is being an entrepreneur, because you're putting yourself and your own human capital and your own financial capital out there to create something for yourself. But as someone who has a past with a felony in it, you can create your own brand, your own life redirection by being an entrepreneur. You're not going to have someone tell you, "No, I won't hire you," because you have a felony on your record. You can go, "I'm going to start my chef business, and I'm going to tell my story," because people, and I'm sure you can attest to this, people intrinsically want to hear a good story and then see someone overcome. Like that's you always want to see the good guy win at the end, and that story that they get together, right?
And that's very true. And it's interesting you said that. And in my book, which I'm going to shamelessly promote, that damn cookbook, promote Amazon, please pick it up.
Damn cookbook, I like that.
That damn cookbook. It's an autobiographical cookbook. So there's a lot of my life and my story, and a lot of the things we're talking about now are in the book. And I did it for multiple reasons. Number one, I really think that, especially as men in this country, we need to work on being vulnerable and saying, "Look, I fucked up. I wasn't always the best husband. I wasn't always the best father. I've made mistakes. I'm learning. I apologize. I want to do better." You know what I mean? That's part of the book. Um, also, like you said, you have to change, you have to turn the table, you have to turn the tide. And that's what I did with this book. You know, like I said, I was turned down for 2 different television shows because of my record. They said that because, you know what I mean? Like the one show, they were ready to give me a plane ticket and fly me to Texas to shoot this thing. And the lawyer said, no, we can't because of his record as a liability. So you know what? I said, here is my story. This is what I've done. It's on the table now. Now you have to deal with me on my level. And so to go to your point, yes. So you take that negative and you turn it around and you control the narrative now. You know what I mean? This is my situation. This is my TV show now. This is my cooking show, which is the direction I'm working on. You know what I mean? This is my book. People now want to hear my story. So we have to move past my past and let the people hear what they want. And you're absolutely right. So that's, I've worked to change the narrative from a negative to it is what it is. Let's move forward.
And I think that's, you know, in the world we're living in today, there's an extreme lack of accountability in our
doubt,
society.
100%.
And I think you know, from the law enforcement perspective, from the parenting perspective, we talked about a little bit before the show, you know, the world is filled with shitty parents. And that's the grassroots beginning of shitty adults, right? So you're raising kids to have a lack of accountability, a lack of judgment, a lack of responsibility, a lack of personal self-worth, over entitlement. When you're creating that society of that, your felonies pale in comparison to the level of shittiness that's coming out of our world.
But unfortunately, the way that our society is set up, certain things get put under a certain microscope. And you know what? And it's one of those situations where you have a couple of different choices. You can either sit and bitch and moan about it and allow it to be an obstacle you choose not to overcome. You can stomp and wave your fist and scream and holler and hope that eventually somebody's going to give a fuck what you're saying and change it. Or you can acknowledge it. Yes, it's shitty. This is the situation. But this is what I can do about this situation right now. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not going to turn a blind eye. I'm not going to stick my head in the sand. But I'm going to do what I can do right now. You know what I mean?
And I think impacting lives the way that you do. So you have many different touch points in how you impact people's lives, from just on a story, overcoming your own issues in your past and you're rising above addiction and turning yourself into a successful person who has all of these great attributes and qualities. Your personal training, just the fact that, for those of you that are into Spartan shit, which I don't have the body to be able to do that stuff, but Jason was a world-class Spartan competitor. So we did all that on top of, he's kind of like a modern day action hero, love story, like the shit that you do. It's like, it's crazy that you can cook, you jump off shit and swing around stuff, and you train people to live better lives, and you're like a holistic superhero. So
that's cool. I like that. I'll get that. Yeah, I like that. I can work with that.
So, but you have all these different touch points in people's lives. And one of the greatest things that someone can do is to inspire someone else to be better.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
When you have those different ways that you have so many different tools that you can use to help. If somebody's overweight, you can help them to get a better diet and increase their exercise. And if somebody is already an elite athlete, you can take them to the next level. If somebody wants to learn how to cook, you're going to show them that. I've seen your videos where you're teaching people how to cook at home, and like there's so many different ways that you inspire people to do stuff for themselves to be better. I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you saying that. But I think the main thing that we can all do right now, and it's so easy to get angry right now, and I struggle with that on the daily basis. Not getting angry and being compassionate and being empathetic and being understanding toward people, especially right now. So I think that's the main thing that we can do is, and it's so hard, like, but we need to take a step back and just try to put ourselves in that other person's shoes. You know what I mean? For instance, you and I, perfect example. What you do and who I am right now, like society has us like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there's so many moving parts in that whole narrative. You know, one of my clients, her husband is in law enforcement, and we'll just leave it at that because I'm telling people's business. But we had a dialogue the other day, him and I, for about maybe 45 minutes. I'm not going to change his opinion. He's not going to change my opinion. But we had a constructive, respectful, adult conversation about some very important information. And I think if nothing else, we need to get to that point. You know, people have these discussions thinking that I need to change your opinion. I'm never going to see the things the way you see it because I don't do what you do. I'm not in your situation. And you're not going to be able to see things from my situation because you're not me and you don't live my life. But at the end of the day, if we can have some kind of dialogue, if we can talk and agree to walk away from that conversation, not agreeing, but not cursing each other out, calling each other names, putting each other's down, and all this other bullshit that goes along with it. I mean, that has to be a thing.
You have no idea how important what you just said is. I'm sure you do, but I've had, over the last 6 months, 7 months, I've had probably 24 high-level conversations with members of the African-American community leaders, trying to figure out how to find the center to where we at least have commonality. As a white law enforcement officer, trying to help bring that side of the table together with the other side of the table. And right now we're not there. And that hurts my soul because I want there to be acknowledgement of both sides' opinions and not agreement. Acknowledgement.
Right. And that's what, I think even at this point, and we're not going to get into the politics of it, but I think at this point where we are, finding a center is a stretch. But I think, like you said, just to sit into a room with the community and law enforcement in a civil dialogue, no one over talking everybody, no one shouting, no one bringing up, oh, well, you shot Pookie 3 years ago, or you did this, you know what I mean? Like, and just have that dialogue and at least leave that conversation with points from both sides that we sit down. You're like, you know what? I get it. I get it.
And I think and you had talked about it earlier, that every problem has so many subtle nuances behind it.
Yes.
Like there's so many, the visual image, and I'll give you an example. I was brought in to talk to a woman's kids about what's going on because they're confused about what's happening in the world, and are cops bad, or all black people bad, or what, the whole misconception that's out there.
Right.
And I sat down and I tried to explain it all to them. And I asked them if there was one, she was 15. And I said, well, what questions do you have? Because she was the oldest, the youngest was 11 or 12. And they had some great questions just about police incidents that have happened, and rioting and looting, and the difference between that and protesting, and like the subtle nuances behind it all, and understanding the depth of the issues in the Black community and how long and nuanced those are over.
Yeah. Well, we have our own issues that we need to, speaking of accountability, we need to be accountable for, you know what I mean? And I think, but that's a whole other.
And I think the perceptions, and not from me to you or you to me, but the person that's sitting watching TV, whether they're black, blue, brown, green, it doesn't matter. If they don't directly have a horse in the fight, right? If they're not in the
no,
right, so they're going to sit there and just look and make an opinion,
right?
And
100%.
And it's based on information that's being provided through a screen, or through a website, or through social media, or whatever.
Right.
So no one's really getting, like I broke down a couple of police incidents, right? I broke down what happened as a police officer, not as a, what did he kill them or not kill them, or did the person deserve to die or not deserve to die? But as a cop, how do I, when I go to a call, you know, I did a TED, I'm sort of going off tangent here, but I think it'll come back around. I did a TEDx audition a couple of years back in Asbury Park, New Jersey, made it to the finals. Didn't get selected for the show, but was very proud of the 5-minute live audition I had to do in front of an audience. And it was about, the theme of the TEDx was chaos. And I used the perspective of a police officer going to an unknown type situation and the chaos that's going on in our bodies and in our minds. And people need to understand that, you know, to be a cop, literally to be day one, and we talked about it before, my job is to unfuck people's problems on a daily basis that I didn't create and I didn't ask to go there, but I'm there. So after 18 months, I have to start unfucking people's problems perfectly. You have 6 months at the police academy, 12 months of riding along with a veteran officer at best. Sometimes it's even 3 to 6 months. And then you're often on your own answering calls. And when you dial 911, you don't get to pick the guy that shows up at your house. You don't get to say, I went to 30-year guy who was SWAT, who's a hostage negotiator. Like, you don't get to choose the officer that shows up. So you're hoping that the person that shows up is capable of unfucking your problem. And the reality is I'm walking into an unknown. I don't know anything other than what the person called 911 told the dispatcher that they're relaying to me. I'm kind of flying on limited information. So my toolbox is this big when I start. And as we progress into the situation, that could be in 1 minute. It could be in 1 hour. Right. But as we're solving or unfucking that problem, the toolbox gets smaller because certain things are no longer viable options.
Oh, I get it, yeah.
And when you're on a call where there's, you know, lethal force involved, it's not a matter, and I can say this with 100% certainty, in any type of call where you are called to go to, not ones where a cop may have a vendetta against somebody and he does something criminal. I'm saying if you dial 911 and the police show up and shit goes bad, that didn't go bad because of hate. That didn't go bad because of racism. That didn't go bad because of bigotry. It went bad because shit went sideways and the cops have to make a decision in a split second. And there's nothing but fucking fear coursing through their veins. And when people don't understand is that fight or flight is in every single one of us. That instinct. When shit's going sideways, you want to run. I want to run. I want to leave. But you can't because my job says I can. And the only other job like it is a soldier, where you have to go forward against the instinct. And when you're in a situation that's so high adrenaline, so high antagonism, there's anger, there's violence happening, when you have to make a decision based on 1 split second on a moment's notice, based on your own experiences and your own understanding of what you're seeing and processing that information very quickly, and any training you may have had, that's what's going to determine your outcome there. And if you're a 30-year veteran who has a whole shit ton of experience, you may handle that completely different than the guy that just graduated and just got off field training, and he's the one that showed up that day, and that's how he handled it. And they're two different responses. I have a rookie that was not a rookie anymore, his second year, but how he handles things is a rookie way of handling things. And it's my job to say, listen, dude, not every car you pull over in the parking lot of the shopping center is suspicious. It could be the mom waiting for the girl who just got done working at freaking Dairy Queen, right?
Right.
Use your perceptive brain.
And I think, you know, that's the narrative that a lot of people don't hear. And then conversely to that, you know, as a person of color, let's put it this way. As a person of color, as a community, there is a general perception of law enforcement that is community-wide, and you will agree to this.
100%.
And because the majority of a community feels a generally same way about law enforcement is indicative that there's a problem. Not blaming, I'm just saying that there's a problem. If the entire Black community feels a certain kind of way about law enforcement, that's a problem. Now, where the problem comes from, that's what needs to be fixed. But that's a problem. You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying, the fight or flight, the fear, I would not want that job. You know what I mean? That is a hard job to in a split decision choose if somebody lives or dies. I would not want to go to bed put my head on my pillow at night knowing that I had to make that call.
Oh,
Okay.
I
You know what I
agree
mean?
with everything you said, but 100%, a million
But
percent.
but on the other hand, you have a whole community that does not see law enforcement the way that the other part of the country does, the other part of our society does. Certain people in our society, they see law enforcement, oh my God, the cops are here. That's a wonderful thing. Then there's another part of the country that sees the cops, oh, fuck, the cops are here. Not saying that they did anything, but that's just their instinct. Oh, fuck, the cops are here.
And that's a learned thing. Everything's learned.
I
think
it's a learn. Yes, it is a learned thing, but there is a reason that is learned. And I will
agree. Oh, no. Oh, there's no doubt. But here's what, my only other, and I think it's on both sides, law enforcement too, that, if you're going into a, Compton,
correct.
And you're part of the Rampart division, you're going in and you know that you're going into a gangbang. Your approach to that area is different than.
But it's not even that dramatic. And I'm going to take it a step beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing now, especially right now, we are seeing America.
Can you explain on that?
Yes. America, there's a difference between an American and an American citizen. Would you agree with that?
Not off that statement, but I mean, if you explain
let's put it this way: an American citizen has to fight for the rights that American has.
America, the country, is different than America.
No. An American citizen has to fight, historically had to fight for the same rights that the Americans were innately born with.
So the Native Americans?
American citizens. American citizens, let's go down the thing. American citizens, we had a fight for the ability to get a job. Americans could always have a job. American citizens had a fight for the ability to move next to an American.
So are you saying that I just want to, so I'm a little confused. So an American citizen, you're saying, is the black person who became a citizen later?
It's not necessarily black. It's anybody who wasn't included in We the People. Let's put it that way. Because We the People did not include everybody.
Okay. Well, yes, I'll say that. It's fact. But
yes,
my converse argument to that, and I've had this conversation, this exact conversation before. I 100% believe that it's historical fact that three-fifths of a man was a thing, right?
Correct.
So I get that, and I historically believe 100% that African Americans at the time were not included in the construction of the Republic of the United States of America, right?
Yes.
So, but I believe that we the people was designed to allow for that to happen. Like
if that was the case, then it's 60 years ago. I should not have had to pass a law to drink out of the same water fountain that you did.
Oh no, I agree. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm saying
no, I'm gonna say, but that's what I'm saying. Inherently, there's been a group of people in this country who've never had to fight for their rights the way that another group of the country has, and they're both quote unquote Americans. So there's an American citizen, and then there's an American.
Agreed, 100%. But I will say that there's writings from Thomas Jefferson prior to signing the Declaration of Independence that stated, even though he was a slave owner, his intentions were to end slavery and include slaves as citizens of America. That was part of his intent when the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was created.
But we're talking, and getting back to my original statement, we're not talking about intent. We're talking about what's going on. So what we're seeing is America. The problems that we have are an American problem. And I'm not talking down on America. I'm not bashing America. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not saying anything. I'm just speaking as a factual, as factual. What we're seeing is a representation of what America is. And until we change that, all these other problems are still going to be here because we are upholding what is considered to be America. And that has always been, a certain group gets treated a certain way and a certain group gets treated a different way. And people are like, oh, well, that's past and it's history and that's not the case now. That's not true. And it is the case now. I mean, because if it wasn't the case now, like I said, we wouldn't have the narrative that we have. We wouldn't have the separation we have. And I'll take that back to what I said before. It's not a matter of, people pulling a race card is not a matter of that. It's a matter of, just like you're saying, there are certain truisms in your job. There are certain things that are the case. And there's certain things that are the case in this country. It's how you handle it and how you approach it and how you move forward from that. You know what I mean? And it gets back to my thing about compassion and empathy. If more of us were compassionate and empathetic toward each other, the way things are wouldn't stay the way they are.
Sometimes I think, and I agree with you, sometimes I think we're talking two different languages, we meaning America. Like we want the same end result. I've had this conversation many times too. The end result is I want every person to have the same equal rights.
Exactly.
They do under the law. But I want everybody has the same rights under the law. Whether or not you can afford a good lawyer or not is a whole different conversation.
Everyone has the same law. That the law isn't the problem. The problem comes to the people's interpretation of the law per case basis. That's not equal across the board.
Well, I would argue that that goes against, that's more economic than it is racial. I've seen it for 30 years where if you get,
I'm not talking racist. I'm just saying, period, that the law is not based on the law. The law is based on the personal interpretation of each case, regardless of color.
Oh no, I agree, but I think that's actually a great statement, is because I personally believe, now, do I believe there's racism in America? Absolutely. Do I think there are racist people? Absolutely. Do I think America's systemically racist? No. And I know we can have that conversation too, but I believe America is socially, economically biased. I believe that we're all part of a 99% that are basically fighting over who's fucked worse. There's the 1% that control our government, control the narrative, control everything that's happening in America. And then the rest of us are just sort of fighting for our ability to get unfucked.
I mean, and I will agree with that wholeheartedly. But I do not agree with the part that America is not systematically racist. I mean, I think that is a very, with all due respect, that is a statement that a Caucasian can make with luxury.
Well, we're never going to agree on that one. Because I didn't grow up with luxury.
No, I'm not. No, and that's the thing. When you say that, people always equate luxury to. I'm not talking money. I'm saying luxury as in the. All right, let me put this way. I tell this to my kids all the time. Only in America do you have the luxury to choose what you want to eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a luxury. Most places in the country, you get food if you get food. In America, oh, I don't want that piece of chicken, or I don't want that vegetable.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot. We're saying luxury. That's a luxury. So as a white American, you have the luxury to say that the country isn't systematically racist. As a person of color, I don't have the luxury to say that because I'm living that every day. Let me ask you a question. When you walk out of the house, how many times do you think about being a police officer?
How many times do I what?
Think about being a police officer.
Not often.
But that's a thought, though. Like that's that's who you are. That's but
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. How many times when you walk out of your house, does it run across your mind that you're white? Never. On a daily basis, I'm reminded that I'm black.
Give me an example.
I walk down the street, somebody grabs their purse because I'm walking next to them. It happens all the time. I've already walked across the street and people have locked their cars as I'm walking across the street, like I'm going to jump in their car.
But is that racism, or is that and listen, I love having, well, let me finish my statement.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. So there are people in the world that don't have interactions with blacks, right?
The majority of white people in the world don't have interaction with.
So where do they get their interaction? Where do they get their information from? Where do they get their where is that opinion generated from?
So
if they don't have that Like I grew up in a
Well,
black street.
right.
Like
Well,
I was the white guy on the street. So I understand I've had history.
so let's put it this way. I get what you're saying, but because I don't have knowledge of misogyny, and I was raised to disrespect women, and I was raised that it was okay to hit a woman, that's okay. No, ignorance of something.
No, I'm not saying it's okay.
Yeah. So just because they don't know they're being racist doesn't make them not racist.
But you didn't let me finish my statement.
Oh,
but
I'm sorry.
what I was saying was, if the only information I'm given, and absent any other experiences, if the only thing I'm getting is through whatever source of movies, TVs, music, media, social media, whatever, if the only information I have to draw from is from whatever information I'm drawing from, and that's how I formulate my opinion, and that opinion has been ingrained in me for however many years until I get into a situation where I'm in around black people. Am I racist, or am I not exposed to the world enough to where, like, if you go to the Middle East and you go to shake somebody's hand with your right hand, you're going to insult that person because you didn't know that that's the hand they wipe their ass with, right? So, like,
so let me at a certain point in time, let me ask you a question. If you bought a house, right?
Yep.
And you were never taught that you had to pay property taxes, and you never paid your property tax. Okay. You never took the responsibility to educate yourself on what you should do as a homeowner. And they come and take your house because you didn't pay taxes. And you say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to pay taxes. What would they say? Well, it's your fault for not knowing. As an adult, you have a certain point in your life where you're supposed to educate yourself on other people, and not being exposed is not an excuse.
I would argue that that's a high expectation to place.
That's a high expectation to be able to be a functional person in society, and to have a basic knowledge of other cultures.
Well, no, I'm just saying I'm not saying that's not idealistically the way it should be. I'm just saying we had this conversation when we started. I had 3 kids in an abandoned building. Their parents never told them that an abandoned building is not is still owned by somebody.
Right.
So, I mean, this happens on every level, on all topics.
Right. So getting back to what you're saying, like if they were never exposed and all they see is the media, there's a certain point in your life as an adult that you need to educate yourself on how the world works.
I agree. Oh, 100%.
If you're going to a foreign country, you should go on Google and find out the customs of that foreign country before you go there, and don't assume that everybody acts the way you do. That's your responsibility. That's
most people don't do that, as I guess my point.
Right. Well, that's most people are fucked up.
I agree 100%.
Most people are fucked up. But getting back to what I'm saying is, regardless of your education on race or whatever, on a daily basis, I'm reminded that I'm black in this country. So I don't have the luxury to say that there is not systematic racism, because I face it on a daily basis.
And I feel for you for that. I really do.
No, it is what it is.
But that's not, I mean,
right.
I guess my point is that I believe most poor people are poor and equally on the same level of on the government's eyes. And I've worked for the government for 30 years on many different levels. That if you go to Pittston, Pennsylvania, or any town that once had some sort of a mining town or steel town or lumber or whatever they did, and that employed everybody there, right? And then all of a sudden that business is no longer there for whatever reason, whether it's shipped out overseas or it shuts down because it's no longer the resource that's being mostly used, so they have to shut down and people are out of work. Well, those same people are going to be now poor because the government's going to go, and I truly believe this, the government says we want as many people reliant upon us as possible. That's what the government wants, because the government doesn't have any other function other than to get support from people. They want your support. They want you to be part of their overall agenda. And I believe if you take every small town that once had some sort of a major enterprise there, and now those people that were once working and thriving are no longer working and thriving, and you provide them government assistance to keep them sustained, and then you make it difficult for them to find work elsewhere. If you take that and you look at every small town in America, and then you look at the urban environment, which is the same ideal that the government's doing, is they're making it difficult for the urban environment to get a job and keep a job, because most people that live in the city, no matter what the color they are, they don't have their own car because jack the price up for parking. So you have to use public transportation. Public transportation is not reliable. So if you have a job where you have to go take public transportation to get there, and you're going to be late 2 or 3 times because the bus was late, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah, right. No, it's so it's social engineer. I call it social
100%.
engineer genocide. Yeah.
And I believe that's not dependent on race.
No,
that's
it's
dependent on votes.
That's not. But and I have this discussion all the time when you try to explain white privilege, and it's like, well, I'm poor, I don't have privilege. White privilege is not about monetary or social economic. White privilege is the fact that your color does not make your hardship harder.
I'll agree with that, and I agree with that definition of it, because that's not the definition that everyone else is using.
And that's the definition. I mean, that's what it is. It's because the color of your skin does not make your situation harder.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Like, I agree with that, and I think that's also a lot of times, and I'll use this example too. You know, if I lived on 10th and Diamond, Philadelphia,
why would you live on 10th
right?
and Diamond?
Well, nobody would. Nobody wants to.
The bottom.
But let's just say that's where I lived.
Right.
Being white would not be a privilege there.
No, it wouldn't. But that how you feel there is how we feel on a daily basis in this country.
And I would say that, you know, I would agree with your definition of white privilege.
Let's put it this way. No matter what you do in this country as a person of color, and as a white male, okay, you can attest to this because you hang around other white males, or white people, you know how they talk. No matter what you do as a person of color in this country, you can hold the highest position in this country that was held by a black man, and he will still be called the same word, and you know that for a fact.
Well, no,
with some
people, yes,
exactly. That's my point. That's my point.
Okay, and I agree with that,
and that's my point.
But I can tell you from the cop perspective that we are equal opportunity haters. We don't care what your skin color is. We just want you to stop doing the stupid shit that keeps us from sitting in that parking lot, drinking our coffee, looking at the internet. Like, that's really what it comes down to from a cop's perspective. Is all I care about is I don't have to be bothered to unfuck your problem. That's a great day for me.
Right.
And I don't care. I've had as many white meth heads that I've thumped up for being an asshole who decided they didn't want to be arrested as I have black people.
Right. But you know what? And I think, and again, I'm not a police officer. I can't speak for police officers. So I'm not even going to say what I was just going to say. I would hope that, you know, they say that it's not all cops, it's just some bad cops. And I do agree with that. You know what I mean? And I would hope that the majority of good cops will do what's necessary to weed out those cops that are giving cops bad names.
And I would say it is a super minority that are the bad ones. And that, I mean, just statistically speaking, the data shows that. But and I can tell you, I've worked 4 different agencies in the last 28 years. I've worked federally, and I've worked 3 local police departments. I've worked with thousands of men and women. And never once in my interactions have I met a dirty or racist cop. I've met bad cops, meaning suck at their job. Like, listen, I'm telling you, there are some cops that did just suck at their job. And that sucks for me as a cop, because that's a person that I would not want to come back me up on a call, right? So cops have the same thoughts on the cops that suck at their job as people that are dealing with those cops when they call 911 have about the cops that suck at their job. So that's universally well known.
Right.
But sucking at their job doesn't make them dirty or racist. They just suck at their job. And I use that, and I say it that way because I would argue that a majority of the incidents that happen in our country where shit goes sideways is done by cops who just are not supposed to be cops. Like,
and that's unfortunately, that's one of those situations where, you know, any other job, not any other, but most other jobs in this country that you are not qualified for, shouldn't be doing, whatever the vernacular you want to use, does not result in someone not going home.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of jobs that are similar in nature. Like a doctor can
In the
operate
big,
and leave a scalpel in you.
I'm talking in the big scheme of things. How many
Right.
people are doctors?
Oh, no, yeah, I get it.
And what's compounded by that is what I was saying originally about the whole mindset of this country, and I made a post about this a little while ago. Okay, number one, I'm black. Number two, I'm a felon. Okay, so if something were to happen, and I were to be in a situation, God forbid, whatever reason, and I was shot by a cop or a situation in Georgia with some trigger finger happy civilian who thought he was doing his job, the first thing the news is going to say, convicted felon Jason Moss was shot, blah, 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 blah. And by that narrative alone, the whole situation changes, regardless of what the situation was. And that's the problem.
Well, because I would argue this, though, that the converse is happening more frequently, meaning the narrative gets told beforehand before any facts are known. And there's plenty of situations where what actually transpired is not what was said 6 months ago. When the facts are actually
look at certain cases. I'm not even gonna bring up the cases because they've been beat to death. But look at certain cases, and then and you always joke about it, not even joke about it, but we're saying, all right, let's start the time clock because in 48 hours you're gonna have a Candace Owens or somebody coming on and saying, oh well, this person was he had this felony and that felony and this felony and that felony. Okay, yeah, but was it germane to what he was doing right then and there? But that's the narrative that they'll put out. You know what I mean? My point is
the day you're talking about is the minority of the news outlets. I mean, you look at MSNBC, CNN, any of those, that narrative is completely different than what you just mentioned.
Matt, I'm gonna tell you this right now. I don't have cable. I have a single television, and it's only for when the boys come over if they want to watch DVDs. Right. I don't.
You might be the smartest man in America.
I don't watch Fox. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch any of that. You know what I mean? I get my news from certain sources online, and I'll read, whatever, because the narrative is so spun. You don't know what to believe.
And that goes back to my lack of understanding of what's actually going on in the world.
But my point is, and I don't agree with you that that's a minority because they throw that narrative out there because that's all the society listens to are these little sound bites. You know what I mean? And especially if you put a person of color saying these things that they already think and agree with, it validates their thought process and they go no further. You know what I mean?
I think to say that happens on the one side is not unfair because it's happening on both sides, where you're going to get the Karens of the world who are out smashing down out windows and looting and rioting, and they're getting their information from the other side of the aisle that's saying
I think
it's both sides.
As far as I really think that, and I think about this all the time. I think about our situation in our country all the time, and I think about where we are and what's going on. And I think about, people are like, oh, what would the founding fathers say about this? Or what would the founding fathers say about that person or this person? Sadly, they would be on the side of what's going on right now. Because that is, come on, they were all slave owners, man. They were all slave owners. What's going on?
Let me ask you this. I'm going to throw this out there, and we'll go back to it.
All right.
Let me ask you this. And I've had this conversation too. It's like I'm having the same conversations over and over again, but that's good. We need to talk.
Because it's the same.
Right. But my question is this: is can we hold 2020 knowledge and evolution to the same standard as 1776 knowledge?
Yes, and I'm going to tell you why.
Well, hold on. Let me. And I'm going to tell you that the reason why we can't is because collectively we've all learned more. We've all grown more, and there's been evolutions and everything. And if that weren't the case, then we would be holding the caveman responsible for not having a Tesla all the way back then.
Now,
the knowledge is different.
No, the knowledge, not only the knowledge isn't different, but the attitude is the same. Okay, so you have to remember that we are only really talking about 50 or 60 years. These people are still, the people that made Jim Crow and all these, there's a lot of them are still alive, man. Like that.
I agree. Our government
is not just because the law change doesn't flick the switch on people's ideology and thought process.
I agree with that.
You know what I mean? So
I agree with that 100%.
It has not changed, and the basis of our system has not changed.
I think we're confusing two things.
What's that?
I think we're confusing America, the framework, with human interpretation and usage of that framework over the course of 243 years. Because
the framework was not all inclusive. The framework never included everyone.
And I agree with that. We talked about that. But I think the fact that the anticipation of it including, and then the continual framework. I'm talking about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. I'm talking about all the things that were added to create the potential for you to be who you were supposed to be, who you were from the very beginning, and who you are now, as far as part of America. I truly believe that. I believe that human beings are essentially flawed, and that when you give them power and the ability to be corrupted, they will get that way over time. And I do believe that the same individuals that were there and alive and influencing our country and interpreting things through legislation are still alive today and creating a lot of the problems, or have brought in more people of the same ilk into our government.
And I'm going to respond to that with this. And I totally disagree with what you're saying. And I will say this because let's back it up. As a culture, as a society, as people of color in this country, we have never had anything that was not approved and given to us by white America.
Okay.
Any right that we have had to be given to us by white America. All right. Until white America is as frustrated, upset, and disgusted with racism as we are, it's never going to change. It's never going to change.
I can't disagree with that. I don't know I don't have a counter to that, because I don't know if that ever is going to, if that's the case, I don't know how that ever gets to the point of happening.
Right. So your point of, we've learned and we've progressed from, no, we haven't, because the same ideologies that was there is here, and it's still okay.
But I guess you're making the assumption that majority of white people are racist, because if that's the case, then we wouldn't be in this situation.
I'm not saying that they are. I'm not saying that. Yes, but I'm not saying that they are intentionally flag or cross lighting, hood wearing racist. I'm saying that it's a societal indoctrination that a lot of people haven't looked past or tried to educate themselves beyond that.
Well, we can agree to disagree on that, and I get it. It's perspectives change depending on whose lens you're looking at the situation from. So I get that. I truly do, and it's not. And you and I certainly are going to solve that problem.
No, and it's not a matter. And it's not a matter of solving that problem. But I think, as we said before, dialogue like this is important, and a lot of people get uncomfortable when you start talking about stuff like this, and that's the problem. You can't get uncomfortable. You have to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree.
Like, racism is always going to be here if you talk about it. Yes, and it's going to be here if you don't talk about it, and we need to talk about it. And here's the thing too. On the flip side, I'm not asking for special privilege because I'm Black. You know what I mean? I don't want anything given to me because of the color of my skin. I just want to know that if I walk into a job and you walk into a job and we both have the same credentials, they're going to pick the best person for the job because they're the best person for the job, period. That and on top of that, I don't need a law to make that happen. That's what I want. I want to know that I can buy a house anywhere in this country, and I don't need a law to make sure that I can buy a house in your neighborhood. I want to know when my kids go to college, that their grades got them into college and their extracurricular activities, and not a quota or some law that had to pass to make sure they had some Black people in that school. I want to know that my kids got in school just because.
And I think, well, that's kind of counter to what we were just talking about, because it had to be, we're talking about it. It wasn't that way at the foundation, is what you're saying, and we didn't have.
But if they repeal, which they're trying to do in a lot of places, if they repeal affirmative action, we go right back to where it was before.
So are you for affirmative action or against affirmative action? Because what you just said is you would be against it.
I am for it only because that is the only way that we get half a fair chance. I want to live in a society where it's not needed. That's what I want.
Okay, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
All right, let's shift. That was a great. First of all, I love these types of conversations. I think it's important. I think it's healthy. I think everyone needs to hear it. And if they can hear a white cop and a black ex-felon having a conversation who grew up together, I think that helps people.
And again, I'm not blaming cops or pointing finger at cops. You know.
Oh yeah. Oh, I get that.
Yeah.
But I think people need to hear that these conversations can happen, and have it be civil and done in a way that is respectful to one another. And I think it's important for them to hear it. So I'm happy we took a hard right and had this conversation.
I think it was going to be inevitable that we were going to go down that road anyways.
Yeah. I mean, that always, and you can't ignore the elephant in the room in the world we're living in today. So
no.
So your book, your cookbook,
yes,
is it available now?
It's available on Amazon.com. That Damn Cookbook. Also, I have a line of spices out. That Damn Spice. I'm working on the website is in the works, but until then, you can get a hold of me at Jason Moss Personal Chef, or Jason Moss on Facebook, or Jason Moss Recipes on Instagram. And I can get you my wonderful spices. I have 3 spices: the OG, which is like a general all-purpose spice, the remix, which is more of a vegetable fish, and I use it for seasoned oils, and then the meat mix, which is, of course, for meat. And I also have a line of t-shirts I'm coming out with, some different apparel. So Jason Moss Recipes Instagram, Jason Moss Personal Chef, and Jason Moss, just Jason Moss on Facebook, or drop me an email at Jason Moss Personal Chef at gmail.com.
Are those spices your own concoctions?
Yes, they are.
Nice.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, I've never had your food, but I've watched your cooking videos, and I end up hungry as hell by the time I'm done. And do you do like meal preps and stuff for people that need it?
Yeah, I do meal prep when, now I was, since COVID, I had to scale back on that, going into people's homes. It's getting a little bit better now. But one of my main services, I come to your home and I prepare a week's worth of meals for you, and I put it in the refrigerator. And all you got to do is open it up. I also do delivery where I drop that off. I have a weekly menu up on Jason Moss Personal Chef on Facebook, and also on my page where I do different home deliveries, tacos, and different meals and stuff like that. So yeah.
And what is if you had to decide, like, to tell people what your type of cuisine is you cook, what would be like your genre? You have the barbecue people, the Southwest, the Asian,
and people, and I talk about that in my book. People always ask, what's your style of cooking, or what's your favorite food? And as a father, I hope you can relate to this. I always say that's like asking me who my favorite kid is.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're supposed to say, no, all my kids are the same. Wow. Okay, he has a favorite.
Well, no, I have a favorite. But that's funny. I do. Here's what I have. I have my kids have boxes that I like where their wheelhouse is.
Okay.
And they're each of them are my favorite in their wheelhouse.
Gotcha.
But my love for them is
equal. Nice, right. Nice save.
Thank you.
But no, and I looked at its food like I really can't pick one type of food because I love food and that's my passion. And as far as a style, I would say my style is simple. Like I cook simply, and I simply cook, and it's not like a rudimentary or a basic, but it's I allow the food to speak for itself. I allow the flavors to naturally develop. You know, I always use the analogy of a chorus line in a musical. You know, when you hear a musical, the chorus line, you hear all the voices, but not one particular voice stands out over the other. And that's how a well-seasoned dish should be. You shouldn't taste one dish, you know, like say for instance you have an Italian food, so the dish is garlicky but it doesn't taste of garlic. Or if you have spicy food, the food, you know, you get all the different flavors, and then at the very end you get that spice on the back end going down. So that's, you know, my approach to food.
And you're not like a classically trained chef, right? You're a lot of this is.
Oh no. I am classically French trained.
Are you?
Yeah, I went to the restaurant school in Philadelphia. Listen,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I thought you were like I thought this started off as a hobby and you just became
no. I've been a professional chef for 25 years. I always did that, you know, behind the scenes of my athlete stuff. But yeah, I was the last graduating class of the restaurant school in Philadelphia before they moved to over the bridge to the University of Walnut Street. I spent the first 4 years of my career in classic French houses, where I learned to hate French food. I hate French cooking. It's just so pretentious. And I'm not a rule follower. So yeah, but no. I you know, I Carême and Escoffier and all those guys, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, shit, I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, that makes it even better that you're writing a cookbook and you got all this. Although I in my head I had you this guy that just started cooking, and like all of a sudden you like immersed yourself in all these different things and testing flavors. In my head, I'd worked that up, and that's how you came up with
it. But you know what? And that's not too far from the truth, because yes, you know, I always joke that the two things I took from culinary school was food science and food history. I've been big into food history and food science since culinary school. But as far as my style of cooking, especially what I'm doing now, that's exactly right. Actually, I have to go back about 4 or 5 years ago to my ex-wife, my last ex-wife. Yes, I have 3 of them.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, shoot, man, you have no idea, dude. But yeah, she was a professional bodybuilder, and you know, I was, and you know, coming from that field, you know how not only unhealthy but boring the food is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know how they do the whole swing from what do you call that? Bulking up, and then the cutting, and then the prep time, but you know, the prep area before they go on stage, and the cutting of calories, and
like it makes a wrestler's like look feeble.
Yeah, exactly. So my thing was with her was I wanted to show her that you could have real food that tastes good, but you could still do what you needed to do. So pretty much I developed for her an eating program that she took to stage and got a pro card with it, but had real food. And, you know, we documented the whole progress. And so that's where I got into Ayurvedic food, which is an Indian holistic kind of eating, where they really work from a cellular level. You know what I mean? You can relate to this with your background. You know, I've learned that if you feed the cell, if you keep the cell healthy, then the rest of the body follows in suit. So I cooked with that in mind. You know, mitochondrial health. That's my big thing. So yeah, I mean, you weren't too. It was pretty much like a crazy scientist. I was, you know, online and I always tell people to do your own research, but please don't do like WebMDs or, you know, go to like Mayo Clinic and John Hopkins, those blind studies where they, you know, do that kind of research. And that's what I did for like about a year, just to put this eating plan together.
It's brilliant. I love it. Well, brother, it was a great conversation. Yeah. I think my listeners will learn some things, not just about you per se, but about the world at hand and how perspectives interpret what you think you see. And I think having these conversations more frequently will help increase the probability that
we
can get past this moment.
Right. And let me add one other thing, piggyback on what you're saying, and just to bring our conversations full circle. I don't believe that you truly know a person until you break bread with them. So to all your listeners out there, I would implore you, if you don't have a lot of people of color in your life, find somebody, invite them over for dinner. Have a conversation. For the people of color out there listening, find yourself a Trump supporter. I'm not being a dick. Find yourself somebody who's on the total opposite side, invite them for dinner with an open mind. Sit down, have dinner, have a conversation. I'm not not to convert or whatever, but just to have a conversation. I think that's what we need to do. Just have more conversations.
And I think that's when argument ends. You know what I'm saying? Like when you can see it, even if you don't agree with it, if you can see both sides of the coin, you don't have to argue anymore, because you know you can have a conversation and walk away respectful.
Correct. And I just do that. Have a conversation. Grab a cup of coffee with somebody, and just, yeah.
I love it. Well, brother, I'm going to close out the show. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk offline.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you very much for tuning into this very insightful, very important episode of the Two Dates in the Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Thank you again to the amazing personal chef, personal trainer, Spartan, social aware son of a bitch, Jason Moss. And I'm telling you, if you haven't had a chance to experience all the things that are going on in Jason's world, make sure you get that damn cookbook.
Please get that damn cookbook.
Amazon.com. You can go in there and get it, order it today. Well worth the money, and I'm sure you'll be eating happy and singing Jason's praises when it's all done. So everybody, thank you. God bless. Take care.
Thank you.
Be kind to one another.